Stories in Stone, Luna's Royal Guard. By TDR. Stone in my hoof. Stories in Stone, Luna's Royal Guard. By TDR. Stone in my hoof. This was insane. Granted, most things involving Pinkie Pie wound up hitting that point sooner or later. The fact Applejack and Rainbow Dash had gone along with this as well made it clear they had not talked to Rarity and Fluttershy. I told you both I am fine. Now let me go already. Now no need to worry, Twilight. I'll be on ya just as soon as we were sure you're not gonna hole back up in the library again soon as you're free. I was studying. She squirmed a bit, hog-tied by Applejack and dangled from a rope held by the flying Rainbow Dash. She was being carried who knows where at this point, but it was clearly something Pinkie Pie had set up. The pink pony had lured her out of her house with something about a problem when these two jumped her. The trio walked, and were carried down a small path through the woods toward where Pinkie had told them to meet. Yeah, well, you're gonna get all dusty doing nothing but reading all the time. Seriously, you need to get out more. Spread your wings. Or horn or whatever. Yes, thank you, Rainbow. I feel so much better now that I'm outside and swinging like a pendulum. What exactly did you three plan? Nothing much, mostly trying to get you into the fresh air before winter hits us too hard. Kinda warm now, but Granny says the snow's likely to come early. She's right, it is on our schedule to have first snowfall in a couple of weeks. But how does she know that? Claims her knees tell her. That does not explain why I am being flown somewhere or to what I am being flown to. Oh well, to be honest, Sujercube don't rightly know himself. Pinkie Pie has something set up, but oh boy. Twilight hit the ground with a thud as Rainbow Dash dropped her. She winces, glancing up to see I and Rainbow slack-jawed looking at something. Rolling over off her back, she lifted her head, looking through the trees, her eyes widening. The entire field was covered in garish lights, streamers and booths. There were lines of them, each trying to outdo the other with the bright colors and flashing strobes. The far side of the field held a creature carousel, what looked to be a house of mirrors, horror rides, some spinny things, and a giant wheel towering into the sky with little buckets for ponies to ride in. The smell of festival cooking, candy and other delicious things filled the air, wafting together in a mouth-watering mix. Cries of joy and of terror filled the air, coupled with buzzers and ringing bells and the roaring of the rides. Alarms sounded as prizes were won or tried for in the plethora of game booths set up around the field. What in the world is this? It's the first ever Pinkie Pie Fun Fair. The what? The trio of them caroused as Pinkie untied Twilight. The first ever Pinkie Pie Fun Fair. I've had the idea for a while of one big party that travels around with rides and games and food and lights and music and shows. Recently I met a couple of ponies who liked the idea and we got together talking about it. Well, to make a long story short, we set up the plans and asked around, and one of them knew a pony who had this. Another one knew a pony who could get rides, or could do this, or knew some pony, who 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 knew some pony. Twilight reached up, tapping the side pink pony's head. Thanks, Twilight. I got stuck there for a moment. Anyway, we got everything together and here it is. I wanted to make it free, but the others didn't think we could get as much done like that. We settled on a few bits to get in and ride anything, and the food and games cost a few bits as well. But still, I got everyone tickets, and Fluttershy and Rarity are already here with Spike. I figured this would be a great way to spend the last few days before winter. Come on, this is gonna be fun. Pinkie had indeed been correct. This was a great deal of fun. Fluttershy, Rarity and Spike had met them at the main gate as Pinkie passed out their tickets to get in. The entire field was filled with ponies on the rides, playing games, and running about enjoying themselves. The 7 of them joined the flurry of activity just as readily. Applejack and Rainbow Dash's rivalry starting almost instantly with the games as they constantly one-up each other with prizes. That stopped the instant Fluttershy walked past carrying a giant plushy bunny prize larger than she was. Pinkie was everywhere, trying out every food on the menu and trying to share as much of it as she could with all the others. Seems with her being partially the reason for this event, she was not charged for the food. The rides were next. Fluttershy declined to ride many of them, though she watched and held what they had won along with her bunny. Rainbow seemed bored with the Ferris wheel. The rest of them were rather amazed that you could see Ponyville from the top of it. The funhouse and mirrors were also avoided by Fluttershy, though she had to be dragged off the carousel wanting to ride all of cute animals that were bouncing around on it. By the end of the day, all of them save Pinkie and Spike were tired and full from all the food. Pinkie was still bouncing around like always, and Spike was already asleep across Twilight's back. They joked and talked, having a fun time still even on the walk back. Pinkie, next time you want me to come out with you to something, just ask. Okie dokie Loki, though if you were asked to come out, you would have asked why. Then I couldn't have told you and you would have said no. If I had told you, it would not have been a surprise and you might have said no anyway with all that studying you're doing. I doubt I would have said no to this, no matter how interesting my studies are. Oh, Twilight, how has that been going? Not too bad, Fluttershy, but I keep having to radio everything I write. When I look again, I keep seeing new things of interest that I have to make mention of. Well, alright, but I still want to read it. If that's alright. With winter coming, all the animals tend to go to sleep or fly south, so it gets very quiet and a bit boring. I will be sure to let you know. They split off from there, heading back to their homes as the sky grew dark, saying their goodbyes as Twilight headed into the library, putting Spike to bed along with the plush dragon he had won. She pondered briefly if she should sleep as well, but the pull of her studies was too strong. She looked over everything, making sure it was all set up before casting the spell and fading into the form of Gerard. It was odd, but she seemed to be picking up what he was thinking much more clearly, as if she was scrying from him rather than his sword. Line of dashes. Gerard winced, his shield failing, the strange dagger clattering to the floor as he panted. His eyes opened and he reached down, biting into the grip of the blade again. He exhaled deeply, concentrating hard to make another shield. His teeth clenched around the dagger in his mouth, stabbing hard at the green glowing panel. his flank shuddering as the shield resisted for a moment before shattering under the pressure from the blade, a backlash knocking him off his hooves, his rump hitting the ground hard. A slight rap sounded from the door of his room. "Sergeant? Are you okay in there?" "I'm fine. Leg is still giving me a bit of trouble, Doc. Nothing I can't handle." "Well, if you are sure you do not need any help. You seem to be getting a bit worse the last few days. Always seem tired and on edge. Might be a bit of combat stress disorder. I can set up an appointment with a psychiatrist if you like." No, it's fine. A bit stressed but nothing to worry about. Boredom mostly. My brain is just as messed up as it's always been." He muttered the last bit, looking down at the dagger. "What was that last part?" Nothing. What's today's therapy?" "I would rather not shout through a door, Sergeant, if you want to be social now, so when you come out of your room I will let you know." "Right, thanks." It had been 3 months since he had taken the dagger under the Princess of the Moon's order. 3 months since he had been taken along with Starfall back to Canterlot. 3 months of therapy and surgery to get his leg back to normal. Princess Luna's magic had reattached it, stopping him from bleeding to death and losing the limb, but it had been a hasty job. The bone in his leg was still fragmented and bits of shrapnel had to be pulled from his side. He likely would have never made it up the hill without the aid of Starfall. The princess had thanked him for his aid, making sure that both he and Starfall received a promotion and commendations for their heroic actions to aid her. The other survivors of the train had received similar awards for their service. The effects of Starfall's actions had been called numerous things. The one that seemed the most popular was the sonic rain boom, followed by the sonic rain crash. The impact of that explosion left a sizable crater in the ground, but had no ill effects on Starfall. Some of the smarter ponies had mentioned a buffering effect from the sonic light nimbus that had surrounded her. It was all just talk to Gerard, although he was asked a great many questions about it and he figured Starfall was getting grilled somewhere as well. Between the questioning he had been tended to at the best medical facility Canterlot had to offer. The meals were by far better than he had had in months, and not having to share a room with 10 other ponies almost seemed a foreign concept. He had however not heard anything from Princess Luna about the blade he kept hidden. The waiting and boring periods between therapy and questions grew longer. Eventually he was left with just therapy. Curiosity soon got the better of him in his free time. The blade was only 2 apples long, seemingly little more than a sharpened hunk of jagged metal. It was very sharp, however, and never seemed to lose its rough edge. Otherwise there was nothing different from it and any of the other bonehound weapons he had seen, save the lack of gems. He thought to test it, remembering the pain he felt when he blocked it with his shield. Forming one of the square panels, he lightly jabbed the blade into it. His cry had roused the doctors and nurses patrolling the hall to burst into the room. He barely had time to kick the blade under his bed before they stormed in to see what was the matter. Thinking quickly, he made some lame excuse about sleeping on his leg wrong. Since then he had been in a rather thick brace that did not allow him to bend his leg at all, even when he slept. The only time it was removed was when he was in some sort of physical therapy. He had tried again with the dagger, managing to keep his cry silent this time. It took most of the time he was stuck bedridden to be able to hold the shield up for nearly a full minute before the pain forced him to stop. He had also developed another hobby in his boredom once he could move around on his own. Glancing back at the darkened door to the gym, he felt confident that he had not been spotted coming out here to the training hall this late at night. He was still under orders for bed rest, though that's all he had been doing for months now. He needed to get out, to move around a bit before he went completely crazy. He could put his weight on his leg enough to try and do this. This was his fourth trip out, though the past few nights had wound up being little more than practice at falling on his face. Stepping around the gym, he gathered up a few training dummies, positioning them as he remembered the fight. Moving to where he had memorized the princess having been, he started forward, trying to mimic her motions. Like every other night, he wound up on his rump or face, often without having struck a single target. He slapped his face with a hoof as he figured out why he could not manage to glide across the battlefield like she had. No wings. He altered his training a bit, crashing into the ground a little less, but still not pulling off even a fraction of the graces she had. After a month, he could manage not to fall on his face and could take out all the targets, but it was clear his little dance number would not work in combat to do anything but make the enemy laugh at him. He pondered continuing to try grace, before finally scrapping the idea. He was neither as nimble nor graceful as the princess. It was time to go with what he did know, which was brute force with a bit of speed. Of course, that training had gotten him caught and locked in his room for the rest of his bed rest order. Brute force tended to be noisy. It was not long after he had given up on dance mimicry when the princess summoned him. Dressing in his best uniform and a new brace, as the old one had taken a bit of damage from his nightly dance-offs. He strapped his grandfather's sword to his side, the handle having a new dark blue wrap, and the long straight blade polished to a shine. Checking the mirror before he left, he was conveyed to the castle by a Pegasus-pulled carriage. Chatting with the soldiers a bit eased his mind as they came in for a landing at the castle itself. He was ushered inside by a small blue filly in a maid's dress with a cutie mark that looked like a doily. She guided him through halls covered in sweeping tapestries and paintings depicting the princesses and other ponies as well, likely from the noble houses. The maid had to stop every so often to wait for him, an impatient look on her face, though with his limp and sightseeing she managed to keep any comments to herself. She opened the door to a large garden area, pointing him to a pair of figures resting on a dais. Their heads canted skyward, watching something in the air. He started to glance up to see what they were looking at, but a realization hit him. The graceful-looking purple and black mare with a crescent moon on her flank sat next to a pure white mare with a golden sun adorning her flank. His eyes widened as he watched the idle flutter of the white mare's wings and the glow of lights coming from the bright pink and dark blue of their manes and tails. Princess Luna and Princess Celestia rested on the dais before him, both of them. He stood there frozen a moment before a light kick to his back leg brought his eyes around to the small maid shooing him forward as she closed the door with a loud crash at his back hooves. He nearly jumped at the sound as the two regal forms glanced back, spying him standing there. "Ah, Sergeant Kaser, we are glad you could come. Please approach the United States." I do not think you need to use the royal speak here, sister. He seems in a state of proper shock and awe as it is. But this is how we are supposed to speak to our subjects, Tia. When addressing more than one of them perhaps, but with this matter I doubt being heard all the way to Manhattan would be wise. You are correct as usual, sister. Princess Luna sighs lightly, glancing back in the air as Gerard hesitantly approached. He was doing his best not to hobble, but the brace was on for a few more days at least, and it was hard to walk properly with your legs stretched out fully. Princess Luna was by far the smaller of the two, but that still put her as tall as Gerard was, if not a bit larger. Princess Celestia, however, likely would have towered over Reet. He moved closer, sinking down into a formal bow, his horn nearly brushing the top of the grass. You sent for me, your majesty? Do you still have the blade, sergeant? Of course, Princess Luna, I have kept it as you asked. Good. Please set it on the table there before us. He nodded, rising a bit, glancing back and letting his magic wrap around the blade, pulling it from his pouch and moving it to rest on the table as instructed. What? How did you do that? Oh, this is interesting. I think some pony might have been messing around with this item a bit, Sergeant? Both of the princesses turned to stare so intently at Gerard, he felt like he was going to faint. He quite fervently wished they would either look elsewhere or the ground would swallow him up, something that let him fade back into obscurity. Well, have you? I have a bit, Princess Luna. I apologize, but we first encounter this weapon. My shield was out, but shattered be it. It barely held together enough to deflect the blade from strike, and you say you've been practicing with it and Casaran into something like it. Again, so we can block it and keep it from being hurt with a slimmer skill thing. Just looky, I'm sorry if you was not superstowed or anything like that, but you did not you had to show better England. Breath, Sergeant, breath. And calm down a bit, neither of us are going to gobble you up or anything like that. Calm down and try that again. Make it like a report to a superior officer if you feel more comfortable. Gerard blinked at her words, exhaling deeply, trying to collect his thoughts so he would not ramble in front of the goddesses again. I am sorry, Princess Luna, Princess Celestia. When I first encountered the weapon, I used my shield to try and deflect a blow the bone hound directed at Princess Luna. The weapon shattered my shield and was barely deflected. Since then I have been testing the blade against my shield and have been able to hold it together for longer and longer periods of time. If I continue to practice with it, perhaps in time I will be able to hold it off completely in case it is encountered again. Interesting. Your personnel report said your magic was not that powerful. It is not, Princess Celestia. I am only able to muster 2 spells, one of which every unicorn knows and the other a shield spell. Show me. Yes, Princess Luna. Gerard's horn glowed as a large green panel formed between himself and the princesses, both of them regarding it idly as if trying to see something in the spell. Eventually, though, Celestia's gaze turned skyward again. Not bad, Sergeant. You might only know 2 spells, but they are useful for your chosen field. The reason power was mentioned is because this metal tends to cancel magic that touches it. Only very powerful spellcasters can even wiggle a piece this size. How long have you been able to move it with your magic? I do not know, Princess Luna. Usually, I simply hold it and stab at my shield. Likely this is the first time I can recall lifting it with my magic. I never really considered it something to try before. Starfall, please come back down to the United States. We have a guest. Gerard looks up, finally seeing the silver form of his friend dropping down from the sky, sweat glistening on her bare form. She lands panting hard, kneeling before the princesses before rising, seeing Gerard on his hooves and smirking slightly. Nice to see you again, Gerard, at least intact anyway. You do look like you're about to pass out though. You do as well. Either that or you have been flying through rain clouds. Oh good, I was right, you two do know each other. Starfall, please take a rest, get some water before trying again. Yes, Princess Celestia. Gerard glances back, watching her head off to a small pile of her gear before realizing the two alicorns were staring at him again. He froze, snapping back into attention, noting the smirk on the Princess of the Sun's face and the even stare of the Princess of the Moon. Do you know each other well, Gerard? We trained together, Princess Celestia. We also served together against the Bonehounds. Oh, is that all? He barely caught the hint that there might be something more to her question. Though this was the Sun Goddess, surely she wouldn't be implying things. He must be mistaken. Yes, Princess Celestia, we have been friends since training. A pity. Well, that was not it then. I am sorry, Princess, I do not understand. What my sister is going the roundabout way of saying is that Senior Emar Silvertail has been unable to perform this sonic rain boom a second time. The belief that you might have had some sort of romantic link to her that she rushed to save you as she claimed had been considered? Though if your statement is true, then this is not the case. I see. No, Princess Luna, at best it might have been she felt she owed me for saving her from a cockatrice in training. Otherwise we are only friends. Starfall takes back off again, climbing into the air with another nod to Gerard. That might be an idea then. Sergeant Gerard, do you trust me? Of course, Princess Luna. You trusted me enough to bring you that blade, Princess. It would be unfair not to trust you the same. Good, please try to carry on a bit and make yourself more noticeable. I am sorry, Princess Luna, I do not understand. Gerard had not noticed her magic surrounding him, suddenly launching him into the air with such force that his leg brace and sword were left spinning where he had been standing before they fell to the ground next to the princesses. That was a bit uncalled for, sister. If it works, it is not. Besides, if it does not work, he will still land in the lake. Honestly, Luna, you should not have done that. He seemed to like you. What? Oh, you didn't notice? He was clearly watching your flank when he approached. Not sure why, as mine is so much better. The sound of the air tearing can be heard as Starfall chases after the falling Gerard. I do not know what you're talking about, Tia. Sure you don't. It seems you're some pony's favorite princess. Tia, please. Luna blushes a bit as the sound of Gerard screaming is drowned out by a loud sonic boom, followed by a wave of rainbow-colored light before the lake explodes in a shower of water and steam, a multicolored cloud of mist rising from it. The aura ring radiating out from the point where the air was broken. You are right, that is pretty. And quite effective. The diamond dogs will surely surrender now that they see we can repeat the effect. She needs to work on control, however. I doubt crashing into the ground every time is healthy. Well, so long as it stops the conflict, I am quite alright with that. The leader was dealt with by you personally, so the insurgent group of bonehounds is all but gone. Peace might be achievable once more, Luna. I suppose so, but when it is quiet there is so little for me to do. Well, take a stallion, enjoy yourself a little. It has already been a long time. Luna blushes again. There is still too much to do, to bother thinking about that sort of thing. Celestia sighs, rising from the dais, the small dots of a silver Pegasus lifting a waterlogged unicorn out of the half-emptied lake, holding her interest briefly. You are still not over him, and it has been over 2,000 years, sister. Every pony dies but us, and even that is no longer certain if more of these weapons are made. No matter what happens, you cannot seal yourself away from the pain. Avoiding the good things because there might be bad later is no way to live. I know you have only been as you are for a far shorter time than me, but I would have thought, as smart as you are, you may have figured it out, sister. Allow me to pass on something predecessor told me. Do not give up your tomorrow because all of your yesterdays were bad, sister. What happens in the future will be here one day, and what has happened cannot be changed. Even we can only live in the now. That is not easy advice to live by, Tia. Of course not. But it does mean that if some handsome stallion is trying for your attention, you should not avoid them or scare them off. Just being myself scares them off, sister. I am a goddess of night, war, and all things normal ponies wish to avoid or hide from. Not everyone is afraid of you, sister. Right? Even the stallion you claimed was watching my flank was trembling when I spoke to him. Believe what you wish, sister, but I do not like seeing you become more and more withdrawn every year. Princess Celestia heads back into the castle, leaving Luna alone with the approaching and quite waterlogged pair. Starfall's mane hid most of her face, but the grin on her face spoke volumes. Gerard was simply trying to cough out what felt like half the lake. Trust is one thing, Princess Luna, a bit of warning is another, and would have been quite nice. My apologies to you both, but it had the desired effect. Do you know how you did it this time? Gerard coughs as Starfall nods, her grin seeming to get wider. Good, take the rest of the day off, both of you. Princess Luna tilts her head slightly, looking at the stallion as he shakes himself lightly, trying to dry off before putting his sword back in its scabbard. Sergeant, you might wish to purchase another uniform, that one seems to be disintegrating. He glances down at the tattered remains of his dress uniform, cursing a bit as Starfall laughs. Line of dashes. Twilight shook her head a bit, dropping back out of the spell as her clock chimed. She was not expecting such a personal conversation from the princesses. Celestia's comment that there was another goddess before her, as well as the comments that Luna had come long after Celestia, confused her. All her studies had shown the princesses had always been there. She knew Princess Celestia was older than Princess Luna, but this vision indicated far more time than most thought. Arg. Every time she learned something, 5 other things came in and brought even more questions. She replaced the blade in its case, the familiar struggle with the weapon having been made clear by this vision, but the why of it still eluded her. Thinking to check deeper when she could, she blew out the candles heading off to bed.